Today's video is sponsored by Surfshark VPN, of whom more in a bit. Hello everyone. Now, I talk about trains a lot on here, but today I thought I'd talk about something different. Today I thought I'd talk about a train, but a very small one. If you follow my Instagram, you'll know that I like model railways as well as real ones. Rapido announced a while back that they were going to produce a model locomotive that definitely got my attention, namely Metropolitan Railway No. 1. My ultimate project is to build a big layout in the loft based, somewhat loosely, on the railways of East London set in the 1950s through to the 1960s. As you can probably tell from my videos, the railways of East London are something I'm quite interested in. I managed to find a few photos that indicated that Metropolitan Railway No. 1 actually did work in East London at that time. Now, I'm a terrible one for bending the rules to justify getting an engine I like, but for this one, no excuse was needed. So let's talk a little bit about the real engine this was based on. Before the system was electrified, the Metropolitan Railway, now the Metropolitan line of the Underground, was worked by steam. No. 1 is one of the E-class. The Metropolitan Railway classed their engines by letter. This is an A-class, and this heckin' chonker is a K-class. The E-class were built in the 1890s to work services out in Middlesex and Buckinghamshire, and No. 1 was built in 1898. The original No. 1 was an A-class that had been written off in an accident, so this lad took its number. The E-class were designed by T.F. Clarke and built by Hawthorne Leslie of Newcastle upon Tyne and by the Metropolitan Railway themselves at Neasden Works. They were designed for commuter trains, and they are pretty typical of late Victorian passenger tank engines. They're 044s, which means that there are 4 big driving wheels at the front to give it a bit of speed, and 4 at the back to support a large coal bunker and give it a bit of stability. These engines worked out of Baker Street up to places like Aylesbury and Chesham, but only fairly briefly. The Metropolitan's central London lines were electrified in the early 20th century, so what would happen from 1906 is that an electric locomotive would work the train from Baker Street to Wembley Park, where one of these fellows would take over. From 1908, the changeover was at Harrow-on-the-Hill or Willesden Green. In 1920, the large H-class engines were built for long-distance passenger trains, so the E's found themselves relegated to secondary duties. They were a mainstay of the Chesham shuttle. In 1925, the line was electrified out to Rickmansworth, so the E-class were mostly exiled to the outer reaches of the system. In 1933, the Metropolitan line became part of the London Underground under the London Passenger Transport Board. The new management weren't fond of all the weird and not very tube-like things they were doing on the Metropolitan line. Their aim was to electrify everything, and where they couldn't, let other people handle the steam trains. That meant that most of their locomotive fleet was for the chop. However, 4 of the E's would get a stay of execution, numbers 1, 77, 80 and 81. No. 1 gained a new transport number in 1938 and became number L44, and that's the version I have. Aside from the Chesham shuttle, they were used for odd jobs, shunting at Rickmansworth and Neasden, goods trains and engineering trains. In the 1950s, L44 became something of a celebrity. The heritage railway movement was kicking off, and there was a lot of interest in historic locomotives. So in addition to its less glamorous duties, L44 often found itself used on enthusiast specials, including over the East London line. In 1961, it pulled the last ever regular steam-hauled passenger train on the London Underground. I say regular because it has worked many special trains since then. In 1963, it took part in the 100th anniversary of the London Underground. Being quite an elderly engine at that point, a group of enthusiasts decided to raise funds to save it for preservation. In 1964 it was bought from London Transport and in 1970 moved to the Buckinghamshire Railway Centre at Quainton Road, which itself was a former Metropolitan Railway station. In the 1990s it was used on the Steam on the Met special trains over the Metropolitan line, and in 2013 it was the star attraction at the 150th anniversary of the London Underground. Now, this isn't really a review, and I'm not really a model railway reviewer, but I hope I've given you enough of a look at this engine to give you an idea of what it's like. It's very well detailed, and to me, it looks the part. But for me, the next question was, what's it going to pull? Research was needed. One of my best friends when I'm doing my research is this video's sponsor, Surfshark VPN. Why? Well, I'll tell you why. Surfshark uses advanced encryption to hide your identity online. No one needs to know that you're looking up forbidden tube knowledge like that secret line that runs from which could save your life someday. And of course it's great for getting around online censorship and region-specific content restrictions. Want to watch obscure TV series that are only available in one particular country? You can trick websites into thinking you are from that country. Want to take advantage of region-specific bargains when shopping online? Go for it, my friend. Surfshark has servers in over 100 countries and can be used on unlimited devices, which makes it incredibly versatile. And what's more, if you follow this QR code or click the link in the description and enter the code JAGO, you can get 4 months extra free. Now let's get back to talking about underground trains. The underground is a niche interest even within model railways, and the sort of rolling stock that Number 1 would have pulled is more niche still. The photo that particularly inspired me was this one of Number 1 on an inspection train. This took place in 1961 on the East London line. It's a short train made up of what are nicknamed dreadnought coaches. The dreadnoughts were built from 1905 to 1923, partly out of shame. The Metropolitan Railway shared its main line with the Great Central Railway, who had comfortable modern carriages, compared to which the Metropolitan's coaches looked old-fashioned and rather shabby. CDC Designs produces models of the dreadnoughts as well as earlier Metropolitan coaches, but I decided that for now I was going to cheat. I had some Graham Farish suburban coaches. These are, as far as I'm aware, not based on anything specific. They released them in several different liveries. But they do look sort of a bit like the dreadnoughts. They aren't going to fool anyone who knows their Metropolitan coaches, but they cost me £7.50 a piece, so who's complaining? Actually, to anticipate the comments section, no, Jago, the bogies are completely wrong, the roof vents should be totally different, the bodies should have recessed panelling, the compartments of the brake coach are nothing like your alleged prototype, and the doors should have round tops so that they can be opened in tunnels without damaging them. This Jago person, if that is his real name, doesn't know what he's talking about. P.S. Do Croxley Green. The dreadnoughts were originally finished in varnished teak, and very nice they looked too, although the usual reason coaches were outshopped in teak had more to do with budget than a taste for natural finishes. By the 1960s, though, they were in London Transport's rather drab brown livery. I think the end of the brake coach should be red, but I won't tell anyone if you don't. I feel like if I paint it red, it'll highlight the fact that there should also be windows there. I gave the interior a basic and rather sloppy paint job, but you can't really see it. I also picked out the door handles in brass and the grab rails in black. The other problem is that there's a lack of suitable decals. The closest I could find were some bus decals from Fox Transfers. These are gold, and I'm pretty sure that for my evil purposes they need to be yellow. But again, this is a cheap stopgap, so I'm not going to agonise. As the numbers are pretty tiny, I cheated. I just added some blobs of gold paint to represent them. It's not like they'd be readable while these things are going around a layout. Does anyone want some lore? Let's have some lore. So the setting of my planned model railway is a fictional part of East London named Coldhaven. It's a little bit Poplar, it's a little bit Isle of Dogs, it's a little bit Shoreditch, it's a little bit North Woolwich. Basically, it's vague enough to give me the excuse to run more or less anything I like. Coldhaven is served by lots of railway companies because it has a set of docks and a ferry pier. Now I know what you're thinking. No, Jago, the Metropolitan Railway did not work into the Docklands. P.S. Do Pinner. Well, in my fictional world, it did. In real life, there was a plan to connect the East London line, over which Metropolitan railway trains operated, to the London and Blackwall Railway at Shadwell. The London and Blackwall ran into the Docklands. In my fictional world, the existence of this Coldhaven place with its extra set of docks made that connection more economically attractive. So it was built, and a number of underground trains ran to Coldhaven. I haven't yet decided whether the line was electrified or London Transport got rid of it as soon as they could, but either way, that's why London Transport trains sometimes show up at Coldhaven. In the long run, I do intend to get at least a couple of proper Metropolitan coaches, and maybe enough to run a full enthusiast special. But for now, I'm happy with my little Metroland train. Well, I do hope you enjoyed this tiny tale from the tube. If you did, please do leave a like and consider subscribing for more. I would like as ever to thank my donors on Ko-fi, on Patreon, and here on YouTube for your generous support. You are the useful tasks to my obsolete locomotive. I would also like to thank Surfshark VPN for sponsoring this video. Click on the link in the description below to take advantage of their generous offer. And I'll see you all again very soon. Cheerio.